Like many of you, when I heard about Jonathan Hickman's Ultimate Invasion #1, I speculated that this was likely the return of the actual Ultimate Universe, which had been dead and buried several years ago after it had served its purpose. It really wasn't in vogue or popular anymore, and it died kind of an unceremonious death. It's too bad because the Ultimate Universe at one time was pretty awesome. I mean, we're getting like the best Brian Michael Bendis comics of his career. Remember when Brian Michael Bendis was good, Ultimate Spider-Man? Pepperidge Farm remembers. I remember that stuff. And obviously you had the Ultimates by Mark Miller, which is absolutely awesome. If you like the version of the Avengers that you get in the MCU and a lot of the costumes and stuff like that, you can thank Mark Miller and the Ultimates, which is basically the Avengers for the Ultimate Universe itself. I'm apprehensive about this news because, yes, the Ultimate Universe is returning under Jonathan Hickman, although it does seem somewhat exciting. I am all for Marvel Comics providing an alternative to their abysmally run in continuity series right now. They're just basically bad across the board. Yes, there are a few standouts here and there, but for the most part, Marvel Comics are must miss these days. I think the Ultimate Universe can probably give people a different place to go, a different avenue of in-continuity stories that can actually lead to something, maybe lead to an event, lead to something that's going to be, earth-shattering or really mind-blowing within the current confines of Marvel Comics, which you're not going to get in the regular universe because everything pretty much sucks. There are some really good throwback series, but all those are in continuity 30 years ago, and basically they have nowhere to go. So I think this is actually a pretty smart strategy. While many believe the 4-part event series to be the return of the Ultimate Universe, Ultimate Invasion is actually born out of an attempt by the maker, the Ultimate Universe's Reed Richards, to restore the Ultimate Universe. It goes badly, and a group of heroes end up caught in a war fought between timelines. With this war comes a new line of Ultimate Comics. And we automatically get into why I'm a little bit apprehensive about this. I like the Ultimate Universe because I like the Ultimates. I like the Ultimate Universe because I like Ultimate Spider-Man and several of the iterations of the characters. I like those versions specifically. We are not going to get those, from what I'm understanding from the press release and what Jonathan Hickman has said, in this iteration of the Ultimate Universe itself. It's going to be a new take on the Ultimate Universe after the maker tries to return the Ultimate Universe. Obviously, he's going to be somewhat successful. He's not going to return the real Ultimate Universe, but he's going to return a new version of that. And that could be very exciting. Jonathan Hickman, I don't want to sully his name here, is still one of the better writers in comic books today, certainly one of the best writers at Marvel Comics, bar none. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of competition there, so I don't blame you if you are excited, but I would be a little bit trepidatious about this, especially when we get into the details of what's actually going on here and we think about Jonathan Hickman's current timeline while he's been at Marvel upon his return. To launch this new line following Ultimate Invasion's conclusion will come Ultimate Universe #1 in November. This one-shot will be written by Jonathan Hickman and drawn by Stefano Caselli and feature a cover by Brian Hitch. Ultimate Universe #1 will serve as an introduction to the new line of Ultimate Comics, which will feature what Marvel calls an array of brand new hard-hitting series taking place in an exciting new universe crafted by some of today's great comic book visionaries. That therein lies the problem. This isn't just the Jonathan Hickman show. If it was Jonathan Hickman writing the Ultimates in Ultimate Spider-Man or the Ultimate Fantastic Four in another series, and that was it, I think that would probably be pretty good. And bringing Stefano Caselli on board, hopefully he's going to be on the mainline series, is exciting stuff. But the last time we saw Jonathan Hickman launch anything and really manage it, he was head of X, right? House of X, Powers of 10, absolutely amazing stuff. Probably the best comic book event we've received over the last 5 years from DC or Marvel. Just great stuff, groundbreaking, really pushing the X-Men in a new direction that was going to allow them to get away from God loves, man kills, which is basically destroy the X-Men line, because that's what every single comic book, for the most part, in the X-Men line has been about for the last 10 years. It was a new direction. It was somewhere new to go. Unfortunately, Jonathan Hickman didn't write all of it. In fact, he brought on a lot of people by name request that basically ended up killing the line and ended up exiting early. Namely being a Tinny Howard, a Vita Ayala came on board, a Jerry Duggan. While there were a couple of exciting names like a Brian Hill and a Ben Percy, I would say Ben Percy has certainly overstayed his welcome at X-Men, has run out of any good ideas, and has just been kind of treading water for a really long time. The best thing he can come up now is Wolverine versus Predator. Ooh, groundbreaking stuff there, brother. Don't tell an actual good Wolverine story. But basically, he tanked the line, Jonathan Hickman did, when he brought in so much inferior talent and he allowed Jordan White, the X-Men group editor, to bring in so many writers that had been a part of Age of X-Men, the really big X-Men event that was going to kick off Jordan White's time on X-Men. And it was so awful. Basically, everything across the board was bad. And he allowed him to bring back in like a Leah Williams and some of these other really bad writers, which basically destroyed House of X, Powers of 10, anything after that, almost on site. Yes, the Jonathan Hickman X-Men series was actually pretty good. And Wolverine was pretty exciting, and X-Force was okay from Ben Percy there for a minute. But basically, it all ends up collapsing in on itself when you have so many bad creators basically contributing to one line of comic books. And I don't see any way in hell that Jonathan Hickman isn't going to be allowed to destroy this next Ultimate Universe by bringing in a bunch of his friends that have no talent in comparison to him to go in there and contribute to this. You know that we're going to be seeing a Jerry Duggan. They had a good time. He's the reason that he's the writer on the X-Men series. You know that Tini Howard's going to be a part of this. He thinks she's great at magic and stuff like that. So you know so many of those really, really, really bad creators that destroyed the Krakoan era basically within months after launching are going to be a part of this. And that's one of the big reasons, maybe the biggest reason, that I think this isn't going to be something I'm going to really invest in outside of anything that Jonathan Hickman himself actually writes, because it's just not going to be worth it unless he brings in some really high quality talent that have something interesting to say. I'm tired of reading the exact same stories by the same writers that have no talent. And I believe that's what's actually going to happen here. I hope that Marvel Comics and Jonathan Hickman prove me wrong, but from what I've seen with, Three Worlds, Three Moons, and X-Men, obviously, and the people that Jonathan Hickman likes to associate when it comes to creative talents within the comic book industry, this feels like it's doomed to fail outside of everything Hickman does. This is what Jonathan Hickman himself had to say when talking about this, which I also feel is cause for concern. What made the Ultimate Universe originally really interesting is that it was a reflection of the world outside your window in the moment that you were living in. What does it look like in the world we're living in now? It's kind of shocking how much the world has changed in that period of time. The idea of what it would look like to see the genesis of superheroes in a brand new world is a really fascinating exercise. I don't find any of that fascinating. In fact, I'm so tired of reading superhero comic books that directly reflect the world outside my window at that very moment, i.e. everything that's on CNN and NBC and Fox News, that this quote itself just makes me want to hurl right here into my microphone and on the monitor of my screen. We've been living this nightmare for 5 fucking years now. Let's make a Marvel universe that better exemplifies everything that's happening in the modern world today. Well, it's basically failed across the line. There's less interest in comic books today than there were 2 minutes ago, let alone 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, because that's been the predominant direction of Marvel Comics and DC Comics for several years now. And it has been proven to be a market loser over and over and over again. Do I think Jonathan Hickman, because he's a good writer and he actually knows what he's doing, will be able to work within the parameters of what he's talking about and actually make something engaging and worth my time and money? Yes, I do believe that will happen with Jonathan Hickman for the most part. Everybody else that he associates with writing stories outside my window, i.e. what's on my television and what's been on my television for the last 3 months, sounds absolutely revolting. What a terrible idea. The Ultimate Universe, if it was going to return, I wanted to see the Ultimate Universe, not Leah Williams, Tini Howard's, Jerry Duggan's, and Jonathan Hickman's interpretation of what Marvel superheroes would look like today if they were just discovering their superpowers. It sounds, it sounds awful. That's the only way I can say it. Hopefully they bring a good group editor on board that actually has access to real talent, and I will be proven completely wrong across the board. But for the most part, I'm batting about 1,000 over the past 3 or 4 years when I read the information that's available and letting you know what I think is actually going to happen. Do you remember when House of X Powers of 10 was still going on? And I got hammered for this almost across the board. Once they announced their new X-Men initiatives and all the series and all the talent, what did I say? Too many comic books, too little talent involved. I said, this is going to fail almost immediately. People were very angry at me. They yelled at me. They unsubscribed. They gave me negative comments. And guess what? Within 6 months of the Krakoan era of X-Men launching after House of X Powers of 10, It was basically dead, and all those things that I had pointed out along with Doc were contributing factors to that. So I hope I'm wrong, but I'm almost guaranteed to be right. And let's not forget the last time Jonathan Hickman launched something enormous, the X-Men relaunch at Marvel Comics, it didn't exactly go well. He had a long-term plan. He had places that he wanted to go, and basically he was vetoed by all the lesser talents in the office because Jordan White and all of them are a bunch of idiots. And it wouldn't surprise me if it happens to this Ultimate relaunch as well. If you haven't seen this, definitely go in the Wayback Machine. There's also a link in the video description.